These artists are making up for a Chinese opera performance in Canton in southern China. But in no way does this form of entertainment follow its counterpart in the West. This cast is getting ready for a 300-year-old Cantonese play called Lu Chanshu. Lu meaning the message carrier. It is a story about a young scholar's encounter with the daughter of a dragon king. Traditionally, almost all the performers in Chinese opera appear on stage with heavily made-up faces. This thick makeup was first introduced in the olden days when men impersonated female roles. Actors and actresses used their own brushes and paints. The exaggerated makeup of the characters represents part of the pageantry of Chinese theatrical shows. They add color and zest to the performance. The story of this opera is set in an underwater palace. The daughter of the Dragon King has been cast out by her husband, who has found a new lover. She meets a young scholar and tells him her story. He decides immediately to help her and visits her family. The king's brother sets off and kills the adulterous husband. Eventually, the scholar falls in love with the princess. While at the underwater palace, the scholar finds favor with the Dragon King, who wants him to marry his daughter. But the scholar declines, saying he only helped her out of kindness. Traditionally, in Chinese opera, very little scenery or props are used. The stage is vibrant with action by the cast, the placing of the actors and the choreography of their movements, together with the accompanying off-stage music, combining to give the Chinese opera its unique form. Towards the end of the play, the Dragon King's daughter is brought home by her uncle to the joy of the family, and eventually she marries the scholar. Besides acting, storytelling, and music, the Chinese opera is closely associated with acrobatics and martial arts. Here in a specialized training center in Kunming, young students are trained in the art of armed combat for stage presentation. During the feudal rule of China, many women reached the status of army generals, and so the girls are given equal opportunities to learn how to handle arms alongside the boys. Staves with pointed ends and swords are the most favored weapons for the stage. And although these youngsters are only trainees, they have already reached a fairly high standard of proficiency and managed to perform without hurting themselves. Three years of training and regular arms practice are the minimum requirements for the performer of martial arts, or wuzhu, as it is called in Chinese. Although an integral part of the Chinese opera, Wuzhu is considered an art form in its own right and can be staged as it is. In addition to martial arts, students have to go through years of rigorous training in various types of acrobatic movements. These are essential for the battle scenes in an opera. The Chinese are past masters in the choreographed presentation of physical agility or acrobatic skill, and that too requires a very tough training from childhood when the body is supple. Similar to their mastery over the movement of human bodies, the Chinese excel in the art of growing and shaping the forms of miniature trees. Because of the people's love for nature, miniature landscapes are planted in shallow containers for use within the family living room. They are sculptured to look like the real thing, and every care is taken to ensure that the plants and trees match the scale of the escarpments. Here are trees of all sorts growing alongside miniature shrubs and bamboos. Many of them will live for centuries and be passed on to succeeding generations. In addition to miniature tree growing, the Chinese are preoccupied with space and the open air. This had a strong influence on the design of their parks, gardens, and pavilions. Originally, even the Chinese operas were performed out of doors, on temporary bamboo stages, or in pavilions set in natural surroundings. This is a folk opera performed by young pupils from the Hangzhou Art School. They are accompanied by an orchestra composed entirely of students. The story of this folk opera can be likened to the love story of Romeo and Juliet. Only here, the girl joins her lover's school disguised as a boy. But her wedding to another man had already been arranged by her parents, and the boy dies of heartbreak. In this opera, the story ends with the girl jumping into the grave of her Romeo, which then opens and releases a pair of butterflies which fly away together as lovers. Growing from its modest folk origins, Chinese opera received imperial patronage right up to the 19th century, when the Dowager Empress Cixi had this opera stage built in the Summer Palace in Peking. Here, surrounded by mirrors and seated upon this luxurious throne, she would watch her favorite operas. Nearby, preserved to this day, are the costumes the performers would have worn to entertain her. This 700-meter covered way was built so that she could walk around the palace protected from the elements. The Chinese Navy needed modernizing, but the Dowager Empress spent the money allocated for this on the construction of a marble boat for her pleasure during the hot summer months. For centuries, Chinese women have kept themselves cool with fans, which are as popular today as they have always been. In Suzhou, there is a factory devoted entirely to the production of fans. The making and decoration of fans is an art form which has existed for hundreds of years. They have been used in Chinese opera as tools for expressing feminine charms from the beginning. Originally, men played women's parts, but today, with women in their rightful roles, the fan is used as an extension to their dramatic expressions. These girls are students at the Suzhou Opera School, where they are training under the guidance of an expert to become actresses in this specialized form of entertainment.
2、2、3、4、3、2、3、4、4、2。
In addition to the fan, the parasol is also a popular accessory in some of the operas in this region. These teenagers are rehearsing in a specialized school in Kunming. The performance is based on a folk tradition called Huadeng, which is from the Yunnan province. This presentation is called Excursions in the Spring and portrays the story of a grandfather who takes his granddaughter and her friends for a day's outing in the spring sunshine. The synchronization of music with the movement of actors must be exact for all opera performances, and rehearsals are always attended by accomplished musicians. From time to time, students of the Suzhou School put on performances for the public, who appreciate the gentle style of the southern operas, which date back from the 14th century during the Ming period. In Chinese opera, the musicians are always housed in the wings. Instruments such as the pipa and qinghu form part of the string section. The oboe, or shona, the sheng, and the bamboo flute form the wind section, and the entire orchestra is led by the drummer. This is a traditional opera which is based upon a local folk tale. It is called When the Drunken Courtesan Returns. The story concerns a poor cooking oil dealer who falls in love with a courtesan and with great difficulty manages to save 10 ounces of silver to pay the brothel keeper for her services. But when he visits her, she has just been entertaining a rich man and is so drunk she falls asleep. When she awakes, the man is still with her. She becomes so impressed she feels a great tenderness for him, which eventually turns to love. In the end, she helps him to buy herself from the brothel keeper, and they marry. These students from the opera school are dedicated to their art, and at the end of their course will become professional performers. The Suzhou operas in which they take part are among the most prestigious in China. Suzhou has a history of 2,500 years. It has many pagodas, and this one, dating from the 3rd century, has 9 stories and is made of wood. This city is famous for the harmonious sounds of its dialect, and it is said that an argument in Suzhou is more pleasant than praise in Canton. It is a city of 500,000 people. Suzhou is located east of Taihu Lake and to the southwest of the delta of the Yangtze River. It is crisscrossed with canals and waterways which are populated with crafts of all kinds, bringing goods from the countryside and playing an important part in the city's transport system. Once a city of the leisurely rich, today Suzhou is an important industrial center. This factory produces musical instruments for the percussion section of orchestras, ranging from drums, cymbals, and chimes to gongs. These metal discs forged from solid brass are the first steps in the production of gongs, which are hammered into shape by experienced craftsmen. This factory has a great demand for these gongs, which are purchased by orchestras all over China. They play a vital part in the music of the Chinese opera. Tuning has to be done by ear by a specialist. Molded by many centuries of imperial and peasant patronage, the Chinese opera is a complex mixture of music, mime, acrobatics, and acting. This is a rehearsal for a play named Yangdang Shan by a troupe of artists belonging to the Peking Opera. The play is based upon a battle that took place at the beginning of the 7th century between peasants and the Sui general in the Yangdang Mountains. At one point, one of the rebel soldiers dives into a river where a battle is taking place between the two forces. In Chinese opera, very little scenery is used, and a simple rostrum serves as the cliff face. During the Cultural Revolution, the majority of operas were banned, except for a selected few. But since 1977, cultural policies have been relaxed and the traditional operas have been brought back. Once again, this form of entertainment is being welcomed by the inhabitants of this city of over 8 million people. And in Peking, the queues form nightly outside the theaters. Every performer is responsible for his own makeup. The excessive use of heavy paint and bright colors stems from the days when the operas were performed in the open air. Costumes are based upon those of the Ming Dynasty, and there are very strict rules as to what kind of costume should be worn, depending upon the status and personality of the roles being played. Although part of the head is covered, some actors shave off their hair to make their faces seem bigger, a technique from the past. Without exception, all male characters must wear a headdress. And some artists wear long beards to distinguish their roles. In Chinese opera, the majority of battle scenes are choreographed. The performers dressed in yellow represent the rebel peasants, and those in blue are from the Imperial army of the Sui general. In this act, a battle is taking place in the river. As the story develops, the peasants triumph, defeating the emperor's army. There have been a number of rebellions in the past, and although this is a comparatively modern opera, it does give an insight into the history of China today.